Our Europe Editor Armen Georgian in Strasbourg, and he told us what the law sets out to accomplish.
Well, the stakes are huge here, Monty. What the EU wants to do is to reclaim degraded land, which is, we're talking dozens of millions of hectares across Europe, from semi-arid areas in Spain or Italy to depressed post-industrial landscapes in various European countries. And the idea is to replant, reforest those areas, which could provide better soil, more carbon capture, more water retention. All of that could help with mitigating climate change, with the impacts of climate change, and also, crucially, diversifying crops so that you have different crops being grown, and that could actually increase food production overall. So this is not some distant Brussels bubble, institutional type thing. This is a measure which, if implemented competently and well, could have a massive impact on all of our lives in Europe.
Well, so that sounds like a really big goal. As a practical matter, what are the next steps?
Well, first of all, I have to tell you, Monty, there's a real buzz here. It's calmed down slightly behind me, but a few moments ago there were a lot of MEPs briefing. They were quite exuberant. Two of them actually took off their suits and tie and stripped down to a T-shirt which says "Restore Nature." So they're very happy that this law passed, although not by many votes. It was really a close thing. I was speaking to one Green MEP and I asked him, do you think the law has been watered down a lot by the various amendments? And he said, well, to some extent, but the most important thing is that it got through. The EU's credibility was at stake here. The EU wants to be seen as a climate leader. Greta Thunberg was here in Strasbourg yesterday with a group of climate activists urging this MEPs to back this law. So basically, people who wanted this to go through, they're very happy that it did go through, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not in its ideal form. The law was opposed by mainly two groups, the European People's Party, which is the group of conservatives in the European Parliament, and the European Conservatives and Reformists, or ECR, which is the hard right. And those two groups have been getting a little bit closer together in the last few months. They were arguing that this law could put farmers at a disadvantage, that essentially you can't impose things like the nature restoration law or the Green New Deal without taking farmers' interests fully into account. The reason I mention this is because there are national governments, some national governments in the EU who share that view. So even though the EPP and the ECR were, as it were, defeated in this vote, they do still have allies in some of the national governments. And that's important because this process is not over yet, Monty. There are still what's called trilogues. That's to say negotiations between the Parliament, the member states, and the European Commission. And clearly, those European governments that are more conservative or even hard right in some cases will be on the same wavelength as the EPP and the ECR and will want to further water down this law, presumably, or reject it, or find a way to kind of reverse, to some extent, what the Parliament has just done here.